Okay, welcome to the 2024 Trout Meeting. I'm Sean Kraus, Chief of Freshwater Fisheries, and I'll be your moderator for tonight. This meeting is an annual tradition to provide information to the angling public and to provide a platform for interaction. We have a diversity of staff in attendance, including our Assistant Director, Lisa Barno, 3 of our fisheries biologists, staff from our Pequest Trout Hatchery and Hackettstown Fish Hatchery, law enforcement, land management, and significant help putting this all together with staff from our Bureau of Information and Education. We'll be here to answer any questions that you have, and we're going to provide some information through some presentations. This meeting was previously held in person on Saturday mornings at the Pequest Trout Hatchery for years. It typically got about 70 to 100 people in attendance. During the pandemic, we switched to holding this meeting virtually. We saw a significant rise in attendance, and we continued in a virtual format. And then last year, 2023, there were 229 anglers in attendance. As I look right now, we're currently at 87 attendees, plus staff. In an attempt to continue to grow, we decided to try to hold this meeting in the evening during the week. So the thought was that Saturday mornings tend to be very valuable, and more valuable than weeknights to most, and especially those of us that have cabin fever and really would prefer to be outside at that time. So one of the features we're gonna show you here is we're gonna do some live polling. This will allow angler feedback on various topics, and it'll be a way to quantify, kind of if a position is a popular one or not. A lot of times in a public meeting, you might have one person that speaks up, and we don't quite know if that's representative of the whole or just one individual. So Karen, if you could put the first poll question up at this point. Okay, so first poll question: when do you prefer this meeting to be held? Saturday morning, weekend evening, or other? Now, we're probably going to show you how polls can be biased, because right now we're asking the people who chose to join during weeknight evenings. But nonetheless, just want to get familiar with how to use this poll, and I think it makes it more interactive and a little bit more fun. So right now, as the numbers are still coming in, we have 87% of the folks who have voted. All right, so right now I'm going to close the poll. We're at 91% of the people who voted, and we're at 80% of the folks that say weeknight evenings. All right, so if I move on to slide number 2, if we could we'll take that poll down. Slide number 2 here. Basically, I just want to give an agenda. Following this welcome, we're going to have Fish and Wildlife updates from Assistant Director Barno, followed by that a presentation on hatchery production by our Pequest Trout Hatchery Superintendent Ed Connolly. After that, the 2024 Trout Stocking Plan by Principal Biologist Ross Schramko. And then I'm going to give a presentation on the fish code and angler input. And then we're going to close the meeting with a session of general questions and answers. Just a little bit of housekeeping as we get started. As a reminder, this meeting will be recorded and is being recorded, and then it's going to be made available online. Please keep yourself muted. And there's going to be brief question and answer sessions following many of the presentations. So if you're going to participate, please keep the questions relevant to the topic being discussed. And remember, this is a trout meeting. Next, we will be using the raise hand function to ask live questions. If you have a question, simply raise your hand and we'll attempt to call on you. There are many anglers in attendance, so please be patient and we will do our best. We'll do our best to get to everything. If you don't get called on or think of a question after the meeting, you will have an opportunity to submit questions. You'll receive an email as a follow-up to this meeting where you will have that opportunity. And then following the final presentation, there's going to be the general question and answer period. That'll be the best opportunity to ask kind of things that haven't been discussed previously at this point. So moving along, first person you're going to hear from, our first speaker is a familiar face. She's someone who many of you know very well, our Assistant Director and former Chief of Freshwater Fisheries, Lisa Barno.
Thanks, Sean. Good evening, everybody. We really appreciate you joining us here this evening. As you know, we really value the input and the information exchange that we get from these meetings. I just have a few brief updates for you this evening. First, if you haven't heard yet, in January 16th in 2024, the governor signed some legislation that corrected some issues that we had with our buddy fishing license. As you know, the buddy fishing license provides almost a 50% discount to anyone purchasing a fishing license with either a new or a lapsed angler. A lapsed angler is being anyone who hasn't purchased a license in the past 5 years. But unfortunately, when the original legislation was passed in 2015, the legislation had a set year of 2010 instead of a 5-year rolling time frame. So right now, only anglers who have last purchased a license 14 years ago is considered lapsed and eligible for the discount along with their companion angler. So this is a big change, long-awaited change. It also, but will require some modification to our electronic licensing system. So this will take effect for the 2025 fishing licenses. So be on the lookout for it. We're really excited because as you know, years ago, our system wasn't able to really handle the 2-person buying license at the same time. The new system can handle that really well. And now with the changes and the updates in the legislation, we really feel that this is going to be a huge advantage to anglers, because every time you bring somebody back into fishing or somebody new into fishing, you get 50% off your license. It's about as best an incentive as we can get. On some updates on the hatchery infrastructure, every year Parks and Forestry and Fish and Wildlife apply for corporate business tax funds that we can use for our capital projects. And as you know, many of you know how complex our hatchery systems are. There are always things that need to be repaired or replaced. But the list for Parks and Forestry and Fish and Wildlife is long, so there's a lot of tough competition for the funds. But this past year, if you haven't visited Pequest recently, all the roadways and parking areas have been repaved. That's been long needed. We replaced the AC unit at Pequest, and we were able to get some emergency repair work done on our wells. We also, in this upcoming year, have gotten approvals to replace the gas pumps at Pequest. We're going to be doing replace the boilers at the Hackettstown Hatchery, and we also have additional well repairs for well 7 at Pequest. So these projects and this funding is critically important to the agency. And it also provides other assets as far as $1 million a year for habitat enhancement work and access on our wildlife management areas, $1 million that's put towards our fishing and boating access. One thing on the schedule for this year will be some new docks at Round Valley Reservoir as we're watching the reservoir levels come up. And we're looking at getting the construction underway at new boat launch at Jake's Landing, which is on the Dennis Creek Wildlife Management Area down in Woodbine. We're also looking to get some design work start the design for Belvedere ramp. That ramp definitely can use improvements. We also did get approval for an upgrade to the restrooms at the Round Valley Reservoir boat launch. And that's about sums it up for our capital improvements. And then just finishing off a little bit of a positive note on our license sales. In 2023, we sold 146,742 licenses. That is an increase of 2.74% over 2022. And our trout stamps were slightly up with 93,084 trout stamps sold. So we greatly appreciate your support, both in the finances to do the work that we do, but also your valuable input. And with that, I will turn it back over to Sean.
Thanks a lot, Lisa. That was great. Our next presenter is Ed Conley, the superintendent of the Pequest Trout Hatchery, and he'll be talking about hatchery operations and fish production. It's all yours, Ed.
Welcome to the 2024 Pequest Trout Hatchery virtual meeting. My name is Ed Conley and I am the Pequest Trout Hatchery Superintendent. Today I will be going over 2023 hatchery projects, hatchery production, 2023 stocking summaries, and 2024 projections for the spring stocking season. Jumping into projects, during 2023, a corporate business tax funded project allowed for most of the facility to be repaved. The pavement was in disrepair with large cracks and potholes. The new paving will keep the water from undermining the road surfaces and raceway areas for many years to come. Some of the paving replaced was 40 years old. This project cost around $1.08 million. Pictured as the front parking area, upper raceway area, lower raceway area, maintenance and truck garage area, well number 2 truck water fill area, main road, Pequest Trout Conservation Area Fisherman's parking lot, and the Education Pond parking lot. Also during 2023, the main well road was repaired with stone, costing $87,000 in CBT funding. Well number 5, one of our largest production wells, was rebuilt in early 2023. The emergency right angle drive for the backup diesel was also rebuilt after a failure later in the year. In 2023, Pequest staff did several CBT maintenance funded projects. They did a second year of replacing the relief joint caulking, with C&D raceway lines being completed. Several other lines were done in 2022. Due to the short window that these raceway lines are empty, it will probably take 2 to 3 more years to complete the entire hatchery. Staff replaced the old deteriorated chemical shed at the waste treatment plant and replaced it with a new one. Staff also completed a project at the waste treatment plant in which stone was added around the water line of the polishing pond to prevent erosion. Let's jump into production now. This past fall, 1.7 million eggs were taken from 593 3-year-old female rainbow trout that will be used for the 2025 stocking programs. Eggs were taken weekly from August 30th through October 3rd. Pictured on the screen is the 2025 production rainbow trout. To the left is sack fry, in the middle is fry, to the right is fingerlings. These fingerlings are about ready to come into the raceway system after the 2024 production fish are stocked this spring. Monthly inventories are performed on the trout to calculate feed amounts to reach final goals for stocking for each program. While doing hatchery production activities, staff followed disinfection procedures. Staff also used predatory deterrents to keep avian predators out. Most of the activity is seen between March and October. Let's jump into 2023 trout stocking summaries. 2023 spring rainbow trout program saw 595,290 production fish averaging 11.4 inches being stocked, along with 8,235 breeders. A total number of fish was 603,525, weighing in at 325,189 pounds. The 2023 fall rainbow trout program saw 20,670 fish averaging 14.2 inches go out, alongside 950 3-year-old fish averaging 19.2 inches. Total fish for the fall was 21,620, weighing in at 31,364 pounds. The 2023 winter rainbow trout program saw 4,380 2-year-old fish averaging 14.2 inches. They weighed in at 5,656 pounds. The Pequest Hatchery met and exceeded goals for 2023 with 629,165 rainbow trout being stocked in the New Jersey public waters and weighing in at 363,847 pounds. Remember our Hook a Winner program. New Jersey DEP Fish and Wildlife will be jaw tagging more than 1,000 rainbow trout for release into New Jersey waters. These tagged trout will be stocked preseason to be available for opening day of fishing. For more information, visit the website on the screen. If you are a lucky angler who lands one of these fish, send your name, address, fish tag number, and location of catch to attention Hook a Winner program, Pequest Trout Hatchery, 605 Pequest Road, Oxford, New Jersey, 07863. In recognition of your catch, a certificate and award patch will be mailed to you. And remember, please do not send the actual tag. 2023 saw 148 tag returns. Let's jump into the 2024 estimated projections for the spring trout stocking season. These numbers are estimates and may vary slightly. Preseason will see 184,360 fish being stocked before opening day. Another 385,380 will be stocked in season weeks 1 through 7 for a grand total of 569,740 rainbow trout. The hatchery is on target to meet and exceed these goals. Preseason stocking begins on March 18, 2024. Trucks will be heading out to your favorite spots to ensure they're stocked for opening day. Opening day of trout season is April 6, 2024. As well as the spring stocking season, remember our fall and winter programs as well. Please buy your 2024 fishing license and trout stamp. Fishing licenses and trout stamps can be purchased online at the website or at your local agent. Please also see if you qualify for a buddy license that may save you almost 50%. As always, good luck in all your angling endeavors.
Thanks a lot, Ed. A lot of good information there for everybody. If you could turn your camera on, we're going to open it up to the public. So you guys, if you want to use the raise your hand function, if you have any questions for Ed in regards to any information provided in his presentation. All right, let me jump in here. I'm going to make a suggestion. Karen, I'm going to ask you to quickly draft a poll. If you can ask people if their audio and video are working, that way we'll be able to judge moving forward, whether or not the anglers are able to see and hear what we have to say. Looking at the poll results, it looks like 68% have voted at this point. To the question of could you hear and see the Pequest presentation, at this point we're at 78% have submitted an answer, and it's at 72% yes, now 29% no. Definitely apologize for any of the inconvenience here. As we move forward, we're also having difficulty unmuting folks. At this point in time, I'm going to jump in. I have a PowerPoint presentation I can deliver. I'm going to do that while staff works behind the scenes to try to rectify some of these situations. But moving along, as a Fish and Wildlife agency entrusted with the responsibility of state's fisheries, your fisheries, our mission statement is the following: to protect and manage the state's wildlife resources, to maximize their long-term biological, recreational, and economic values for all New Jerseyans. Throughout the year, we gather ecological data to keep track of fish populations and understand water quality and habitat. Equally important is to understand angler usage and preferences. Both the ecological and the human aspects come together and shape management decisions and fishing regulations. Amending the fish code is how the Fish and Game Council updates fishing regulations and establishes seasons and creel limits. We recommend changes to the council as part of the state rulemaking process. Constituent feedback is an important part of this long process, and we encourage this feedback to come early and come often, and concludes with a 60-day public comment period. As you can see, there's lots of steps here for this process, and all in all, It takes nearly 2 years once some potential regulations are identified, going all the way through having them adopted into the and codified before they finally appear in the Freshwater Digest. Our current code expires in 2025, so any potential reg changes wouldn't take place until January of 2026. Through this process, we have the ability to make changes to the trout program, such as adding or removing waters, changing stocking boundaries on rivers and streams, adjusting minimum size and daily limits, adjusting seasons and closures, including the pre-season and in-season closures to waters, establishing opening day dates, and also adding, removing, or modifying special regulation waters such as TCAs, catch and release areas, and wild trout streams. Last summer, we initiated 3 online trout angler surveys. The intention was to cast a wide net and provide a platform for all trout anglers to be heard. Links to online surveys were emailed to all anglers that bought a trout stamp last year. Emails were also sent out across various angling listservs, and links to the surveys were posted on our website. At this point, I would like to post another poll question. So this would be poll question number 2. Did you take the online trout angler survey? As of this point, we see greater than 60% have answered. Now we're up to 76%, 78. We're approaching 90. We're at 84, 85. And I'm going to close the poll. At this point, 44% of the people in this call did not participate in any of the trout stockings or any of the trout angler surveys. 18% said yes, they took one of the surveys. 11 said yes, they took 2 surveys, and 27% took 3 surveys. I kind of find that interesting because I would assume those of you, interested to participate in a meeting like this, I would have kind of expected you to take have a higher percentage of you to take the online surveys. So even looking at it right now, there's 114 anglers in attendance. 44% of you did not take those surveys. That's unfortunate because we really value the input from anglers. And if you're not participating in the process, it's difficult to address the human dimensions of fishing regulations without that input. So that's interesting. I'm going to close the poll and just really want to emphasize the role of public participation. The first survey that we conducted online was focused on the general trout angler usage, and we had 2,146 participants. The second survey dealt with closures, and we had 1,265 participants. And the third survey was an attempt to gauge angler satisfaction with our regulations, and we had 1,107 anglers participating. But since not every angler took every survey, when you look to the right there, you'll see that as far as unique anglers, there were 2,704. That might seem like a high number to you, but in reality, it's only 2.9% of the total number of trout stamp buyers, which was in excess of 93,000. So, once again, we really do thrive on public interaction and public input. And if we're not getting great participation from these polls, not only does it make the polls, less trustworthy, but it really points out that a significant number of anglers are not weighing in. So as stated, less than 3% of our trout anglers participated. And just to point out, this type of survey has limitations, as it only represents anglers that are willing to participate, and it is not necessarily representative of the diverse angler interests and involvement. These surveys are likely biased towards certain types of anglers, and analysis from previous surveys indicate that there's a direct relationship between the most avid anglers being the ones most likely to comment. Anglers who consistently buy licenses are much more likely to participate in surveys than anglers who inconsistently buy licenses. As a result, it can be problematic, and it'd be problematic if you only use one survey type. So in other words, it's difficult to get good information, especially from the less avid anglers. They make up a very large portion of our angling constituency. So here's one of the questions as a sample: describe your ability as an angler for stock trout. As you can see, most surveyed are towards the very experienced side of the graph, with very few representation from novice anglers or even modest anglers. We asked, what was your frequency as a stocked trout angler? And similarly, you can see that the frequency is shifted heavily to the right as well. Now, that might not seem like a lot of times fishing for some of you, but when you go down towards the left, especially that, I fish for stock trout only once or twice a year, we know that a greater number of anglers probably fits in that category, but it just points out that we're not reaching them in this type of survey. We asked anglers what type of waters they fished in 2023, and this showed that 43% of those fished lakes and ponds, while 78% fished rivers and streams. It's very important for us to provide satisfying fishing experiences for anglers, so we looked at overall satisfaction to our trout stocking program. So let's put up poll question number 3. I want to see what all of you think at this point. Right now we're at about 50% of the anglers have voted. And we're up to 70, 83, 85% of the votes have been cast. We'll close it right there with 88% of the people. So yeah, this looks good to me. We have 29% very satisfied, 37% satisfied, 18 somewhat satisfied, 11% neither satisfied nor dissatisfied, and only 5% dissatisfied with the program. So that's definitely good to see. I'm going to now advance the slide and show you fairly similar results for the 2,000 or so folks who took the survey. And that's what it looked like. We actually have a higher proportion of very satisfied anglers in at this meeting right now, as opposed to what you see here. Here's a slide presenting some of the results of where we asked anglers which ponds and lakes they fished and how satisfied they are. The average level of folks for very satisfied or satisfied across all ponds and lakes was 50%. So waters fished by most anglers, and we just kind of ranked the top 5, were Round Valley Reservoir, Lake Arrowflex, Echo Lake, Merrill Creek Reservoir, and Lake Aquatunk. Not surprisingly, satisfaction on these waters was above average. The bottom half of the slide shows waters that were least fished. Now, I must point out that although these waters were poorly represented in the survey, we do have opening day angler counts for a few of them that shows that they were very popular on opening day in recent years. So that's showing you why it's important to use multiple techniques to get this type of information. Because pointed out earlier, surveys have biases. Different survey types reach different types of anglers, and willingness to participate varies. So this is telling me that some of the folks who fish those smaller park ponds might be less likely to take an online survey than those that are actually out there on opening day fishing those same small ponds. Here, a very similar slide for rivers and streams, and the average level of folks very satisfied or satisfied was at 63%. The 5 most popular waters were the Musconetcong, the South Branch of the Raritan, the Pequest, the Big Flat Brook, and specifically the Ken Lockwood Gorge catch and release area. Once again, not surprising, the satisfaction on these waters was above average. The least fished waters are also listed here, with very few surveyed anglers represented with varying degrees of satisfaction, you can see. And I want to emphasize once again that this is only one tool used to evaluate the trout program. Other important tools include fish sampling results, physical angler counts, local knowledge, and feedback from conservation police officers, just to name a few. As many of you remember, that there were significant temporary changes to the program during the pandemic that predominantly got many of the fish out early, thus having many fish available early in the season without 7 weeks of in-season stocking. One change that seemed to have mixed reviews was the notion of a catch and release period after April 1st. So this was something we wanted to ask in the survey because we heard things from anglers across the board. I love the catch and release period. It was the best fishing I've ever had, versus, too many fish die due to hooking mortality, illegal poaching, things of that nature, and they prefer it to be the traditional. Talking about mixed reviews, that would definitely be an understatement. Look at these results here. It's really a 50-50 even split on whether or not the preseason should remain closed to fishing as it traditionally was, as opposed to allowing catch and release during this time. So it's definitely an interesting concept, something we'll have to keep our eyes on. and will no doubt require additional consideration before moving forward. But just so you know, this you'll hear from Ross in a little bit. This upcoming 2024 trout stocking season is going to be the traditional season, the pre-pandemic stockings, 3 weeks of closed preseason followed by 7 weeks of stocking. Another consideration that we want to pose to anglers is to ask how they feel about the length of the spring trout stocking season. In this scenario, anglers were asked if they prefer the traditional 7 weeks of in-season stocking or several variations that shorten the season in different ways to distribute the fish that would be typically stocked during weeks 6 and 7. And just to point out that under either circumstance, the total baseline number of trout for the spring would remain at 570,000. It's clear from this survey that 60% of the participants like the traditional 7 weeks of in-season stocking, and that the combined, if you look at the next 4 categories, it's only a combined 20% that favor some form of restriction. Once again, biases come into play with just like most surveys, but looking at 60% favorability is hard to ignore. And moving on here, in-season closures. This is defined as the waters being closed on the day that they're stocked for the 14 major rivers, and they don't open until 5:00 p.m. This remains popular amongst anglers in this survey, with a combined 59% of anglers favoring the in-season closures on select waters. Several questions in the survey pertain to special regulation areas, and they remain popular. One thing that I really thought was interesting was, of the anglers who claimed to be dissatisfied with special regulation areas, their rationale for that was that they want to see more regulations that are special regulation areas, expanded to new waters, decreasing creel limits on these waters, and even converting trout conservation areas to more restrictive catch and release waters. I found it kind of odd that you say you're dissatisfied in the poll with something, and then the reason you claim you're dissatisfied is that you actually want more of it. But this is what happens when you take surveys. The surveys left many opportunities for anglers to type in comments and submit them, and this option was heavily utilized. The number one thing that anglers were commenting on was they wanted to see more species stocked than just rainbow trout. In fact, 510 comments came in pertaining to that, primarily asking for the return of brown trout. The second most popular comment pertained to increased law enforcement patrolling. And I do have good news reported from Chief Panico just today, that he was proud to report that within the past 2 years, he was able to onboard 9 CPOs, and there are 2 more that are in the pipeline to be hired soon. This currently brings full-time law enforcement staff, that's including some administrative and whatnot, but there are currently 57 or 58 full-time within the Bureau of Law Enforcement. The third most commonly commented on topic was frustration with predation on stock trout, primarily in the form of cormorants. So this concludes my presentation, and this will begin the general question and answer and discussion session. I'll have to check back in with staff right now to see if the hand raise tool is working properly, and we'll do our best to get to your questions.
Anthony Gerbel, I'm going to unmute you, and then you may have to unmute yourself.
Question, why not no more brook trout in these streams?
Yeah, so I can answer that question for you. When we had the bout of furunculosis back at the Pequest Trout Hatchery a number of years ago, it was the brook trout and the brown trout that were most susceptible. Those are the ones that presented with lesions, and those were the ones that were seeing high mortality rates. It was the rainbow trout that were the ones that were most resistant. So we made a difficult decision, but a wise one, to switch the program over to rainbow trout to ensure that we continue to meet our baseline numbers. We didn't want to sacrifice, we didn't want to continue to raise brooks and browns at that point, because we had a lack of confidence in their ability to overcome the disease at that point in time.
Are the brown trout a little more hardy that you might be able to stock them again?
Well, so brown trout do have a slightly higher temperature threshold, but the word hardy is a difficult one to just address in a quick answer, because they proved to not be very hardy in the face of the bacteria that caused furunculosis. So in those regards, they were, we'll say, the weaker of the species. And I can tell you, with significant strides in brook trout conservation throughout their native range from Georgia to Maine, it's not likely that brook trout would return to our stocking program. But we are very interested to get brown trout back in the program.
All right, thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Sure thing. One thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to change gears again. I do want to get Ross's presentation in on the trout plan for the season and the allocations. So let's get Ross back up.
Okay, thank you, Sean. I'm gonna try playing the video. I just want to remind people that if you for some reason, if you're still having technical difficulties, that the video will be made available online, including the recording of this entire program that we're putting on tonight. So hopefully then you'll be able to circle back and see both Ed's presentation and mine. Good evening. My name is Ross Schramko, and I'm a principal fisheries biologist with New Jersey Fish and Wildlife. I'm here today to talk to you about the 2024 Spring Trout Stocking Program and allocations. For many of you who have come to the annual Spring Trout Forum before, this presentation will be kind of a review of the trout program, along with some new information for 2024, like the allocation changes that we have for this year and which water bodies were selected for the bonus broodstock program. If this is your first time attending a Spring Trout Forum, this presentation will also give a quick background on the current state of the trout program, how the trout allocations are determined, and where one can find general information on the trout program, such as where and when your favorite water body is stocked. This spring, a total of 175 water bodies will be stocked with rainbow trout from the Pequest Trout Hatchery. This is the same number of water bodies stocked last year and similar to the number of water bodies we have had in our program for several years now. A total of 90 streams and rivers spread out across the state will give anglers who enjoy fishing flowing water opportunities to test their angling skills in reading currents, finding trout feeding lies, and present their lures, flies, or bait with seamless drag-free drifts in an attempt to coerce some of the state's biggest rainbow trout. We will also be stocking 85 lakes and ponds spread out across the state from Sussex County to Cape May County. Some of the larger trout-stocked lakes and ponds will allow for anglers with boats to test their skills at filling their live wells with big, beautiful rainbow trout, while some of the smaller lakes and ponds will create opportunities for a parent to teach their children the joys of trout fishing and being in the outdoors without having to struggle with fast-moving currents and tighter casting lines. Not to say that small ponds are only for novice anglers, as many of the state's small ponds have the highest catch rates amongst experienced anglers. So for those who want to increase the likelihood of catching their limit in a short amount of time, or just enjoy more action, these small ponds might be just the opportunity you are looking for. The spring trout baseline is once again 570,000 fish, but as you've seen in Hatchery Superintendent Ed Connolly's earlier presentation, Ed and his staff routinely produce numbers greater than this baseline, and with a little luck and a lot of hard work, this year will be no different. Our trout stocking program would not be possible if it were not for the collaborative efforts of all the individuals listed here, from the freshwater fisheries biologists to the conservation officers that enforce the freshwater fishing regulations and help with posting the regulation signage and interacting with anglers on a daily basis, to the stocking crews primarily made up by Fish and Wildlife's Lands Management Bureau personnel, to the Fish and Game Council, who aids in proposals and adoption of new trout stocking regulations in special fishing areas such as a catch and release area, our year-round trout and seasonal trout conservation areas. And finally, you, the public, who through meetings like the Trout Forum and our other freshwater fishing forums, and through participation in our many different surveys, help shape the program and propose many of the current regulations we have today. This program is put on for you, the public, so your input, thoughts, and feelings are extremely valuable to us. 2024 will have the typical 7 weeks of in-season stocking period, which is preceded by 3 weeks of stocking during a preseason stocking period, which many of the trout stock waters are closed to fishing and begins March 18th and extends through April 5th. Opening day is April 6th, beginning at 8 a.m. Next, I'd like to present to you a quick summary on how trout are allocated to the water bodies in our program. The trout stocking methodology uses physical, biological, and social factors for both streams and rivers and lakes and ponds, but in some cases these factors differ between the two groups. Physical factors for streams and rivers are mainly the size of the stream and the length of the stocking influence. So the bigger the river with the larger length of stocking influence or stocking locations, the more fish a water body will receive. The same is true for lakes and ponds. The larger the lake, measured in acres, the more fish it will be allocated. The biological factors are similar for both categories. If the water body remains cool enough through the summer months for trout to survive, it is considered a year-round trout fishing water body and will receive a few more fish than a water body that doesn't remain cool enough through the summer months for trout to survive, it is then identified as a seasonal trout fishery and doesn't receive this additional boost of trout. Finally, the social factors. Social factors for streams and rivers include the percentage of land ownership throughout the stocking influenced area. Is the land public or private? The more public land, typically the better access, the more fish a water body is allocated. Other social factors for streams and rivers include parking and angler interest in the water body. The more people and better access, the more fish that it is allocated. For lakes and ponds, the social factors include population density of the municipalities closest to the lake. Again, the more people, the more fish. Angler access is also considered for lakes and ponds. Does the lake allow boating? Is there a public boat ramp? How open is the shoreline? And finally, are there other water bodies and their proximity to each other? If there isn't many other trout fishing opportunities nearby, then we allocate a few more trout to the water body to give anglers who live in parts of the state with less fishing opportunities a little boost to their trout fishing experience. All of these aforementioned trout stocking factors are found within the trout allocation program. Here's a screenshot of the opening page of the current allocation program. The allocation program is critical in determining how many fish each water body receives, what weeks a water body is stocked, and how the stocking crews should stock each water body. Next, I would like to talk to you about any changes and updates that we have for the 2024 trout season. Mill Pond in Bergen County will once again not be a part of this year's trout program. Mill Pond was suspended a few years ago because of sedimentation that has been building up over time and was dramatically increased from several severe storm events. Mill Pond is officially suspended again this year, and a likely proposal to drop the water body from the program will occur during the next fish code cycle unless the pond can be dredged and conditions improved. The next fish code cycle begins in 2026. Cohansey River in Cumberland County is down to only one trout stocking point on the river. Unfortunately, one of the final two stocking locations was lost, reducing the stocking influence from 1 mile to now just a half mile. This decrease in mileage results in a deduction of 450 fish for the Cohansey River for the 2024 spring trout stocking season. Next, I want to talk to you about the 2024 bonus broodstock water bodies. As a way to increase interest and excitement in the trout stocking program, Fish and Wildlife stocks higher numbers of broodstock in a few, 9 to 10, trout stock small ponds and lakes each year. Broodstock included in the program are 3-year-old rainbow trout weighing 3 to 7 pounds each and measuring 18 to 24 inches on average. These fish are called broodstock or breeders because they are mature fish, 3.5 years old, that were used the previous fall to obtain and fertilize eggs as part of the hatchery's continuous production cycle. Each spring, a different set of waters receives about 3 to 5 times more broodstock than they would traditionally receive. By concentrating 400 of these large trout in 10 relatively small lakes and ponds, it is expected that angler participation and satisfaction will increase as anglers have a greater chance to catch these trout themselves or observe others catching them. The bonus broodstock trout are stocked prior to opening day of the trout season and will be waiting for a few lucky anglers to catch a fish of their lifetime. The 2024 bonus broodstock water bodies are Crystal Lake, Grenlock Lake, Lake Papiani, Max Pond, Manny's Pond, Mount Hope Pond, South Vineland Park Pond, Stony Lake, West Hudson County Park Pond, and White's Pond. Finally, I'd like to talk to you about where you can find information on the 2024 trout stocking program, such as the trout fishing regulations, bonus broodstock program, and the trout allocations, along with other general fishing information. The best place to go for this information is Fish and Wildlife's website at njfishandwildlife.com and navigate to the spring trout sections. There you will find the latest trout information and updates or changes to the program. You will also find a few suggestions of fishing access locations on many of our trout stock water bodies, along with driving directions to these locations. These locations are both by county or alphabetical to aid in you finding a place to fish for trout and to help you explore the many trout fishing opportunities provided to you statewide. If you are more comfortable using the telephone over the internet, you could also call the trout stocking hotline to get a computerized listing of the trout stocking schedule. Please note that the phone number changed last year. Also consider subscribing to Fish and Wildlife's email list and follow Fish and Wildlife on social media. You may also consider downloading the Fish and Wildlife app to your phone to find information on the trout stocking program as well.
Thanks a lot, Ross. That was great. We're going to move right along. I'm going to, it's 8:03. I am going to open it up to the general question and answer period. We kind of got off track a little bit with some of those snafus, but that's not a big deal. We have plenty of time left for interaction, and hopefully we make up for it from here and get those hands raised. We'll take questions on any topic. As we move forward, I'm going to ask staff to turn your cameras on, and we can basically fill in there, and Eric will lead the hand raising session, question and answer.
Okay, I see the list here. Let's go to Dwayne Chapman. I'm going to unmute you. Unmute yourself on your end, and you can ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Great. Just a question for Chief Barno. Has there been any movement on the Greenwood Lake boat ramp?
We are working on it, and there has been a lot of effort put behind it. Since the Browns Point is within the Highlands Preservation Area, the amount of impervious cover comes into question. So while we have a conceptual design, our colleagues in land use are working on trying to increase the available parking that we'd like to see made larger while staying in compliance with the Highland regs. As soon as we get that work done, we will be posting, or parks will be posting on their website, the conceptual design for public input.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to continue down the list. Robert McIntosh, you're next. I'm going to unmute you.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
This question is for Sean. Hi, Sean. In reference to the angler survey, on the statistical summaries, it doesn't seem to indicate participation by license exempt respondents, i.e. seniors. And I'm just wondering how they were accounted for, since they, could have represented a large percentage of the respondents.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question, and I'm glad to say that those folks were included. So in the instructions for the angler survey, once you opened it, and I believe even in the emails that went out to folks, we wanted to record your conservation ID number, but those of you that no longer, those are the folks who no longer require a license, they were able to take the survey.
Yes, I know they were, but how were they statistically represented in your summaries? Because it could have skewed you're basing the participation rates on a total number of licensed anglers, whereas licensed, a large number of the participants potentially could have come from non-licensed anglers, those who are exempt, and it could be skewing your statistical results.
No, okay, thanks for the clarification on that. I mean, there were many aspects of the survey that we'll say was not cross-analyzed, not cross-referenced, and there wasn't a lot of statistical rigor. The number I gave in regards to the number of participants in the survey was just a comparison to give you an idea that it was 2.9% of licensed anglers. But you're absolutely right that number of non-licensed anglers would be a lot higher, which that does not bode well for the amount of participants.
Exactly. So, it could,
yes.
You could be, without adjusting for that, you could be overstating the participation rate, the already low participation rate. I know there's a problem here because you really don't have any means of counting the number of non-licensed participants in angling in general or in trout fishing, as far as I know.
No, that's accurate. Yeah, we don't have that
I mean,
ability.
as long as one can demonstrate that they're over the age limit, you know, they're allowed to fish. But you have no way of knowing what that number is.
No, you're correct.
And they could be significant. It could be a significant number.
No, that's very, very accurate. We agree.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you. Good point.
Anthony Meta, I'm going to unmute you now.
I ventured out and tried some fall, I guess winter or fall stocking. Went out to Roosevelt State Park Pond, Roosevelt Pond in Edison, and the pond had 5 aerators. Only 2 out of the 5 aerators were working, and according to local fishermen, they say that the pond was treated with weed control. The lake was so badly choked with a hair algae. I went out the first day of stocking and 4 days after that, and only saw a total of 2, maybe 3 fish taken. I mean, it almost seemed a waste to put the fish in this lake because every time you cast it out, your line was just totally slimed down. It was almost impossible to present the bait. And again, with the broken aerators, I question how the survival rate on the fish was. But I know you guys can't police everything, but it just seemed a shame to waste fish on a body of water that wasn't being maintained properly by the township or whoever has that responsibility.
Thanks for the question and comment. I can certainly address that. So as mentioned, we do opening day angler surveys, but that's limited to just the 4 hours of opening day. We attempted to use this type of survey to try to get a nice cross section of all of our waters across the state. In that survey, we asked people, which weeks they fished at all the different lakes, ponds, rivers, and streams. And I can agree with you that Roosevelt Park Pond is one of the places that does get poor return rates. I was there on opening day one year for 4 hours, and that was a situation where I actually saw more cormorants eat trout than anglers. The only trout that was caught that morning was one of our broodstock. So, with that, this type of interaction is important to hear from anglers about places that are successful, places that are not successful, and that helps us gauge and refine the program. So thanks for the information. We'll continue to try to hone in on our program to make it better for you.
All right, let's keep moving down the list here. Next, I see Jerry Zambardi. Jerry, I'm going to unmute you. You should be able to ask your question.
All right, 2 quick questions. I fished the Ken Lockwood Gorge quite a lot. The road has been eroded through the flooding. I'm just curious how you plan on handling not just stocking the beginning and not just stocking the end. Then my next question is, how do we know when a rib body is not stocked? I went on opening day, I think it was last year or the year before. Spruce Run Creek was so low that you didn't put any trout in it in the opening day. And it was supposed to be stocked 5 times throughout the year. There was no trout in it. Nobody was fishing it, and I had no way to know, how do we know if a body gets it or not?
Yeah, I can definitely address the second half of that question. Anytime a water body doesn't get stocked, we post that online, and that's a very, very rare occurrence.
Okay.
And I can confirm that Spruce Run Creek was stocked last year.
Yeah, but not opening day.
No, I believe you're inaccurate. I don't want to insult your angling capabilities.
No. It's not the angling capabilities. I mean, I went from Spruce Run all the way up to the end of it, and there was not one angler there. And everybody who showed up left in a matter of minutes.
Yeah,
that's why I was just curious. All right, so you're saying it's online. So how do I find it online? Where do I go for it?
On our Fish and Wildlife website, we have a trout stocking page. On that page, there's updates.
Okay, so I must have missed it.
Yep. So in the rare occurrence that something doesn't get stocked, we always post it. I mean, the last thing we want to do is have a water body go unstocked, have people go out there and have a bad time.
Yeah, no,
So,
I agree. No, I'm just curious, how it handles, just how I can find
sure,
out. But I'm more
sure.
curious as to how you plan to handle Ken Lockwood Gorge with the middle section of that road in such a
Yeah,
mess.
and I can address that one as well. So, there have been multiple road repair projects at the Ken Lockwood Gorge for a number of years. It was definitely a situation where, annually we're bringing in truckloads of gravel, patching, repairing, and whatnot. There was a larger scale project attempting to divert water and to shore things up. And I'll have to say that, through the Ken Lockwood Gorge, Mother Nature seems to win every time.
I agreed. I mean, I was
Um,
there last week and it's horrible.
Yeah.
You,
So in recent years, we've made a decision to not continue to improve the roads until we can put together, a possible strategy to address it. The way it's been stocked for the last several years has been drivers will open up the gates from both ends. They'll drive as far as they possibly can, and they'll stock fish as deep into the park as they possibly can. But I can tell you, we just got a report. Our lands management staff was out there within the last 2 days.
mhm.
And they also concurred that coming in from the top is getting really bad.
Yes, agreed.
So we're going to look at the way, we actually had a conversation about it today. We're going to look at the way that the gorge is being stocked, and we're going to give more specific instructions of how to address, how to get more fish towards the middle.
Beautiful. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Sure thing.
Okay. Scott Fisher, I'm going to unmute you. You're self-muted, Scott. Go ahead.
Hi. I'm an avid fly angler here in Jersey. And I'm bringing up the subject. I know that it beats a dead horse with you guys, but I don't really feel like it really gets talked about at length, at least with the general public, in regards to this brown trout situation. I know it's been a decade since that disease outbreak happened, and I know that you talked about the brown trout being of interest of coming back. I've created a petition about 3 years ago to get the brown trout to come back. And my question is it happening or not? I don't really feel like anyone gets like a clear answer on it. I know it was released in one of the digests, I believe 2 or 3 years ago. It said that that the browns were going to come back, and then I haven't heard anything since. And to follow that up, I just want to say that it is very important to have a variety of species in this state. I'm a guide for New Jersey. I fish the Beaverkill. I'm a Catskill fly fisher. I fish the PA, Broadhead Creek, all that stuff. I know tons of anglers that are getting out of this state to go fish in other states because the lack of diversity in trout. And I would hate to see us lose our own resident fishermen to other states because we don't provide anything but bows. And to be out there and fish day after day after day, 10 years straight of pretty much nothing but bows unless I go out of my way to find wild trout, it does get really, really old, and it gets very repetitive and very mundane for an angler. And I just want to know, is this something that you guys are really taking seriously and understand like the impact that it does for the recreation of it and the importance of the diversity of it? I just never really hear if it's going to be like a yes, we're bringing them back, and when.
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that question. And that's certainly the number one question that we face on a daily basis. First, I can assure you that we're very interested to get brown trout back in the program. It's not for lack of interest. So that's certainly there. A couple of updates I do have for you. One would be that there was an interest to try to prevent, disease within the hatchery, specifically frunculosis. And one of the things that we've been attempting to do is to cover the raceways, so have increased biosecurity. I know that it's very unsatisfying to hear this kind of year after year. Trust me, I don't like conveying that message any more than you like hearing it. But we are getting closer every day, every week. We're getting closer. We have reviewed some designs for covers for raceways. We're trying to make modifications to make them easier to use for staff. So I can tell you that that's definitely something that we are closer than we were last year when we had this meeting. Secondly, we're on the edge of initiating an interesting study. Not sure if everyone on the call is familiar with the term environmental DNA. It's a new technique in science where you can take an air or a water sample to detect DNA from a whole host of organisms, people, bears, fish, everything out there. So we are on the edge of securing a study, which should not take too long, in which we are going to take water samples throughout the hatchery, various degrees of the water coming in throughout the hatchery and the water being discharged. And we're going to look for the presence of Aeromonas salmonicida. That's the bacteria that caused furunculosis that gave us the situation we're in now. Once we get those results, that's going to facilitate choices to take one step closer to bringing browns back. But that's really going to depend upon the condition of the water within our hatchery. Thirdly, I just wanted to point out, being very well aware of the massive interest in brown trout, and as a fly fisherman, as a guide, I still would encourage you to have your constituents read the article that we put in the digest this year. I know it may not feel as if there's that many opportunities, but in fact, there are 60 named waters that do provide wild brown trout. And I can assure you that amongst the staff on this call right now, over the years, through our electrofishing surveys and whatnot, I can tell you this: there are a lot of nice brown trout out there. Most of the waters that you'll see in the digest listed as brown trout, wild brown trout streams, it's pretty common for us to go out and collect brown trout within a 150-meter stretch in excess of 12 inches, which is even, some of which are even nicer than what we produce at the hatchery, with an average of like 10.5. So with that, I also want to acknowledge that I realize the wild trout are not a complete substitute. They're a lot more difficult to catch, much more challenging, and much less abundant in the common places that people fish. So
I think my concern is more of, the point that you were talking about with the wild brown waters is more of the fact that we are New Jersey, and a fully wild trout population I don't really think is sustainable in Jersey with our amount of population and the way that they hammer waters, and that we do need a supplement in order it to last for a while. And that's where more of what I'm talking about is on the
Yep.
You know what I mean. And that's pretty much where I was getting at, is that it's a pipe dream to think that it can stay fully wild in New Jersey and not have them empty it at some point, because there's plenty of guys that come in there and do all sorts of crazy stuff that they shouldn't. So that's more of the direction I was going. But I appreciate you being a little bit more transparent with what goes on and what you guys are working on. It's nice to hear it.
No, you're more than welcome.
And if I could
Thanks,
just
Sean.
emphasize, the reason for the caution is, we needed to go several years without having an outbreak to hopefully remove the bacteria from the system. But we have to be very cautious in reintroducing species that potentially can result in an outbreak again, because it not only jeopardizes, say, any brown trout you bring into the system, it could jeopardize the entire million fish that are currently on the premises. So that's why we're being very cautious. Chief Krause and the biologists are doing what they can as far as getting as much information as possible if there is any residual bacteria in the system. And based on the results of that, we'll determine our next steps.
And Lisa, do they have, just a quick follow-up. I don't want to take up too much time. Do other hatcheries in other states that stock browns have any of these issues, or is this a New Jersey problem?
It's not a New Jersey problem. The situations are very different. There are hatcheries, Pennsylvania, that are furunculosis positive. because they're surface water fed systems. So it's in the system, and it's in the system that they're stocking within. So it's not as problematic. For us, we're a groundwater system. So we don't have that issue of the bacteria already being present. You know, that makes it kind of sort of easy. If you have a bacteria in your hatchery, that's also very prevalent in the waters that you're stocking, but that's not our situation. So we have to be not only cautious of the risk is to the hatchery stock, we also have to be cautious about carriers that we might be putting out into our streams that support wild populations that could also then become infected.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much.
But we appreciate the interest, and I can tell you, if as much as you may be frustrated, I can assure you staff and the hatchery staff are as equally concerned, and none of us want to get back more than diversifying our hatchery stock. And that is definitely our goal.
Okay, I'm going to move on to Nick Niles. I'm going to unmute you.
Hey guys, I want to preface this by just saying that I don't believe this falls under the New Jersey Fish and Wildlife umbrella, but it did come up. Somebody brought it up last year, and I figured I'd ask again because you had some good information on it. Walpack Flatbrook Road has had that landslide and the road closed for about 2 years now. Have you guys heard anything about any work being done in the near future on opening that back up?
Yeah, hi Nick. This is Ross Schramka, the regional biologist for the area. Last time I spoke with the Park Service, their response was that the area is still moving, that the landslide is still occurring. There are geologists that went out there and evaluated the situation. So they're telling us that they're not going to do anything until it stops. I asked them if they had any kind of time frame on that, and they did not. I don't know if you're familiar with the Park Service, but they have several roads, you know, Route 611 in Pennsylvania, which is a very, very busy road,
Yeah.
with businesses on it, and that's a similar situation there. So don't quote me on this, but I would expect to see action on that road before we would see action on Flatbrookville Road. So unfortunately, yeah, you're gonna have to do the long drive around.
Yeah, that road's getting beat up pretty good, man.
yeah, I was just gonna say, you know, check your fillings when you get done, because the potholes will definitely rattle them out on you. And for those of you who know the area and are maybe not aware, but to make matters worse, the bridge in Walpack Center was also damaged this past year. So that makes that even more difficult to get around in that general area. And you know, I don't believe that bridge is going to be fixed anytime soon either, from talking to Park Service. But for further updates, I mean, again, check our website. You know, when it does get open, we'll definitely put it on there because a lot of people are interested. But I would encourage people to pressure the Park Service. It's their ball of wax.
Thanks, Ross. Yeah, I sent them a couple emails of which neither were responded to. So I was kind of curious since it came up last year. Appreciate the info. Thanks a lot, guys.
All right, if I could jump in, let's take one last call, one last question. We are intended to end the meeting at 8:30. We'll take one more question, and then I'll give a couple closing statements.
Okay, next on the list is August Goodmanson. I'm going to unmute you now, August. You're self-muted. Yep, you're green. Go ahead.
Hi, this is August from Colorado. Good to see everyone's face. And I'll be back east again fishing this spring. I am curious, have you guys had any progress on the solar panels for the Pequest Hatchery? I know that was a big factor in getting cover.
I'll take this one if it's okay, Sean. August, how are you doing?
Always good to see you, Lisa.
Yep, same. We are working on it. We spent 6 years in a legal process towards what's called a power purchase agreement, where you have to have agreement ahead that you can sell the power back to the grid. So after that long endeavor, we're moving towards the design of the support of solar panels over the raceways. We are getting very close on that. It's As you can imagine, it's a bit different than putting solar panels on land, putting them over the raceway system. They have to be designed in such a way to allow the fish pump and the equipment and also the staff to access the raceways as they need to load, crowd, and take care of the fish, as well as the feeding. So there's been a number of meetings, a bunch of designs that were tossed out, but we are getting close on a design that we believe can work. So once we finalize that, we'll be looking then the next step as far as a company looking to bid on the project. So it's
Thank you.
road, but we are getting close.
Good luck.
Thanks.
All right, with that, we'll conclude the meeting. Before anybody leaves, before you check out, I just wanted to make sure that everybody is aware that you'll be receiving an email with some opportunities to respond. You'll have the opportunity the email is going to address two things. If you had questions that didn't get answered, please submit them via email and we'll try to get back to you with an answer. Secondly, if you have any recommended considerations for our fishing regulations, this is the time to get those to us now. We're going to be drafting some recommended changes to our fish code, and that public factor is always key. So we want to hear your ideas. There's going to be ideas we're going to have to say no to for biological, ecological reasons, or things we might not be able to do. But for the things that are satisfactory ecologically, if we have the resources to do it, we're going to consider it, and we'll bring those recommendations, if feasible, to the Fish and Game Council. And then just a reminder, this presentation or this entire video will be made available to folks on our website, and also the presentations that you saw today, those will go up pretty quickly as well too. So, Ross's and Ed's, for those of you that had the complications in hearing or seeing them, we will make good on that, and no information will be lost. You'll have that at your fingertips shortly. So once again, I want to thank all the staff for participating, all the hard work that goes into this. I want to apologize for the technical difficulties, and thanks to all the anglers for out there. Really appreciate you giving up your time. We're going to have 2 more public meetings coming up in May. We're going to pick right up where we left off with this one. We'll be addressing everything from trout to walleye to bass across the board. So please continue to participate, and hopefully we see you on the water. Thanks, everybody.